All right. So there's this concept I want to explain. I'm just gonna just kind of jump into it. I'm not gonna explain all the pretext for it all, but I'm just gonna jump right into it, and hopefully it's easy to understand. Okay. When government says it's gonna spend $500 billion on food stamps, what does that mean? You might say, okay, that just means money, and then food's gonna appear on the table. It's not how it works, okay? So first of all, what we need to look at is where that money comes from. It could come from taxes, and it could also come from borrowing. The government could borrow it. And then if it's borrowing it, or even if it is from taxes, where's that money, how does it get into the hands of the people who are either paying it in taxes or lending it to the government, okay? Well, they're doing business, hopefully, and getting their hands on it. And then if you look even further back, the money, a lot of it is being introduced through lending and through a system called fractional reserve banking. And there's a whole, the situation in our economy where more money has to be lent out than is being paid back just to keep a money supply there, which is a totally unsustainable thing, which is stupid. But either way, that's where the money's coming from. So eventually it's going to get to the hands of the government. The government taxes people or borrows it, boom, got the money, now has $500 billion that it can spend on welfare, okay? So what does that really mean? $500 billion on welfare. That means, does it mean that $500 billion is just all of a sudden gonna make food appear? That's not how it's gonna go down. No. That $500 billion is going to go into people's hands, probably paid out like food stamps or something. And they're gonna go to the store just like other people do who work, get their hands on money, and they're going to trade that money for food. You know what I'm saying? So somebody had to produce that food. So there's farmers out there that had to produce it, bring that to the store. It's the same old commerce. It's just the government got their hands on some money by either borrowing it or taking out of taxes. It's just like a person that's working and gets their hands on some money and goes to the store, except it's the government's taking it or borrowing it. And the point I'm trying to make here is that food does not just appear on the table. There's no government that's going to say, here's some food stamps, and now food's going to appear. No, you need free market capitalism for that food to get to the store shelves. You see what I'm saying? If it's here, I'm going to spend $500 billion and get some free Medicare, then the government is not just going to make that appear. The same thing. Free market capitalism has to exist. There has to be doctors that are getting, it's the same thing. The money is going into your hands, and then you are literally going to the market and buying it. Same thing. Insurance, whatever it is. If the government says, here's $700 billion for military, there has to be producers of military equipment, whatever, soldiers to, the labor, the goods and services don't just appear. They don't just appear. It's all sourced from the market. So let's look at this in a holistic perspective. The government, like I said, gets money from taxes and then borrows it. And then what does it spend it on? It spends on a lot of random stuff. And if it says we need 20 battleships, next thing you know, there's a battleship company, popping up, a couple of them, and they're producing battleships. So what I'm trying to point out here is that, first of all, stuff just ain't appearing out of nowhere. But second, when the government creates a demand for random stuff like battleships or I need soldiers, I need this or that, that's a labor that's going towards that stuff. And I look at a lot of stuff the government spends money on, and I'm like, that labor that's going towards making battleships or going to war and shooting people or this or that could have been a doctor. That labor could have been put towards helping these poor people on the streets. That could have been scientists curing diseases. You know what I'm saying? That could have been an artist making beautiful art. That could have been, whatever. And so when the government gets money in its hands and then creates a demand for random stuff, next thing you know, you got people doing that stuff. And that labor, that resource that is being put towards random stuff like war and stuff, it could be put towards positive things that help the community. That is so important for people to understand. And that's really all I want to explain. So I told you I was going to jump into it. Hopefully it's easy to understand. There you go. It needs to be understood. It's just we need to hold government accountable. The government just literally takes a bunch of taxes out of our freaking hands, and then borrows half of it too. Goes in debt, and then eventually expects to take more taxes out of our hands to pay that back. And then spends it on crazy stuff. And that is literally kind of leeching resources out of the free market and putting it into random stuff that's not even useful. If it was spending on good stuff like roads and airports and education, and it does that, but it's also spending on like crazy stuff. And we need to hold the government accountable because it's taking this money and it's creating a demand, which is leeching resource out of the economy that could be put towards other stuff. That's as simple as it is. So that's what I was trying to explain. And I'll leave it at that. I'm out.